Welcome to the Ex Good Girl podcast, the place where people pleasers, perfectionists, and overgivers come to unlearn the good girl rules that you thought were making you good, but now you can see are actually just keeping you small. If you've spent your life being unable to say no, putting everyone else's needs and feelings above your own, constantly seeking external approval, or avoiding conflict to make others feel comfortable, if guilt and resentment feel like a constant weight in your life, it is time to learn to knock that shit off. Every episode, we dive into the stories, skills, and strategies that you need to stop shrinking, start speaking up, and to live a life that is authentically and unapologetically yours, while also deepening the connection and vulnerability in the relationships that matter to you. I'm glad you're here. Let's jump in. It was a lot of fun to record this podcast episode with my friend and Enneagram coach, Wendy Montgomery. It's in two parts because there is just so much to the Enneagram. It's really hard to narrow it down, and we try to discuss as much as possible without fire hosing you. And I hope we did a good job. In part one, Wendy introduces you to each of the 9 types and what people pleasing might look like for each type. And then in part 2, we look at the healing of people pleasing and what it might look like for each type to become more self-aware and take steps to heal the wounds that cause a lot of the people pleasing. And we try to give you a map for finding out your type or for deepening your understanding. I really hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Wendy. Not only do we match, but if you're watching the video, we both have green tops on. I was channeling you this morning when I got dressed, I guess.
Oh, green's a great color for brunettes.
This is a podcast episode. I have been so excited to have Wendy Montgomery is a dear friend and an Enneagram coach. Wendy, tell people a little bit about you and why this conversation is about knowing your type is so relevant to knowing how you people please.
Yeah. Hey, Sara, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I adore you. Your podcast's fantastic. I am Wendy Montgomery. I am a licensed Enneagram coach. I do a lot of work with individuals, couples, families. I even do corporate coaching for the Enneagram. I am married to my fantastic husband. We've been married 30 years. We have 5 kids and a wonderful daughter-in-law, live in Arizona. I have a beautiful life. I've done some really cool things over the years that I'm proud of. But for the purpose of this conversation here today, I'll stay on my favorite topic, which is the Enneagram.
Love it.
Yeah.
So let's just out with the disclaimer right now. We are not going to be able to do any kind of comprehensive justice to the wonder that is the Enneagram. It is an incredible tool. I'm actually going to have Wendy explain it because that's what she does. And if this is of interest to you, Wendy is going to let you know where you can find some more resources that she has put out in the world. The Enneagram has been one of the most important tools that I have ever come across for getting to know and better understand not just me and my own sometimes bizarre behavior, but the bizarre behavior of people I love and who I really want to understand. So start us off with an explanation of what the Enneagram is and then of the 9 types, please.
Perfect. So the Enneagram, it's the best way to describe it is that it's a map of how we think, how we feel, how we act. It offers really deep insight into why we do what we do. And not just why we're doing it, but how we can take what we're doing and improve upon it, how we can grow. And the deeper you go with it, the more complex and intricate it becomes. But at its most basic level, the 9 core Enneagram types show us our core motivations, our fears, what makes us feel loved and understood, and how we make sense of other people and how we make sense of the world. It's like you said, it's one of the best tools I have ever found for understanding myself and others. And what I really love about it is it gives me compassion and empathy for people that are very different from myself that sometimes drive me bonkers. We can have that compassion rather than judgment and criticism for someone that sees the world very differently than we do. And it's gentle, but it's also confronting, because it can help you stop beating yourself up for how you think you should be and have so much compassion for the beauty of who you are. And because when we learn to honor our gifts rather than shame ourselves for the ways that we might fall short, it's a total game changer. And it improves every important relationship in our life, including our relationship with ourselves. So that's the Enneagram in a nutshell.
I have absolutely found that to be true. And as I have had conversations with you and read books and taken, the tests that you offer to your clients, I have felt, first of all, deeply seen, which is kind of weird and vulnerable in a way,
Yes.
but also deeply understood. Like, it just feels, I think as humans, we love feeling seen and understood when we can handle that feeling. I think some of us struggle with that. But when I have read sentences that seem to put like my innermost motivations and fears into words for me, it has been so helpful and really incredible.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, nothing has ever explained me to me like the Enneagram.
And before I have you go into the 9 types, is it fair to say that what makes you each type is your own special mix of circumstances and what happened to you or didn't happen for you as a child, the way you felt loved, understood, motivated, what was prized in your particular family culture or social circles, or there's not a way to really write the recipe for each number necessarily. Am I right or wrong on that?
Yeah, no, that's very accurate. It's a combination of nature and nurture.
Okay.
I mean, most of us, we have the parents we have. They could have been the very best. They could have been the very worst. Most of us get something in between. And I believe they do the very best with what they have and what they know. And there are still ways that we as children get messages of a certain way we need to be, right? And I have 4 siblings. We have 5 kids, all various types, even though it's the same 2 people parenting them. So it's not just the nurture, it's also the nature of who we are and how we come.
Yeah, that's so good. Because there's always unmet needs, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Within the same family unit with the same parents, depending on a lot of different things. So yeah, okay. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And our parents have Enneagram types as well. And they are parenting us through their lens of their type.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
so it gives us compassion for maybe some of the ways that we needed them to show up differently for us that they just didn't or couldn't.
Right. Right. Okay. So walk us through the 9 types.
Okay. So let's start with number 1. Number 1, Enneagram type 1 is called the improver or the perfectionist. I prefer the improver because it's really what they do. They take something good and they improve upon it. So some key words and adjectives to describe a 1 is they are incredibly self-disciplined. They can be black and white thinking. They're orderly. They can be very critical of themselves and sometimes others. They're methodical. They're organized. They're productive. They can be inflexible. They can be uptight. They have a very strong value system. So I'll share some of like the positives and the negatives so that hopefully people can see themselves and nobody feels too called out, but they also feel loved by their type. So one of the core fear of a 1 is to be bad or wrong or corrupt. The core motivation is sort of the other side of that coin, and it's to be good, to be right, to have integrity, to be ethical. They have a very strong moral compass. And I think it's helpful just to kind of give you a vibe of the type to tell you like a few famous people of that type. So like some famous type 1s would be like Martha Stewart, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG, Captain America is a great example. Atticus Finch, if you like or have read To Kill a Mockingbird. Those are all really great representations of a type 1. All right, so type 2 is the helper. This type is loving, warm, thoughtful, incredibly generous with their time and their resources. They're kind. They're the most relationship focused type. They're very service oriented. They can sometimes give love to get love. They can be needy, a little manipulative sometimes. They're definitely overly accommodating. They'll forget their own needs to take care of other people. So burnout's a real possibility for twos. Their core fear is to be unloved or unwanted. And I know this sounds like something every human wants, but for a type 2, it's like oxygen in their lungs. It is the most important thing. The core motivation for a 2 is to be loved and wanted for who they are. So some famous type 2s would be Mr. Rogers, Dolly Parton, Desmond Tutu, Jean Valjean from Les Mis is a great type 2, and Samwise Gamgee if you have any Lord of the Rings fans. Those are all type 2s. And then type 3 is the achiever. For this type, they are incredibly success driven. They are goal oriented. They can be charming, and not in a gross way, charming in like a really sweet way. They are efficiency masters. They can be very image conscious. They're almost always workaholics. They're energetic. They're motivating. They can be competitive. They're resourceful. They will get it done and look good doing it, is how a 3 kind of shows up. One of the core fears for a type 3 is failure. It's being unsuccessful or looking bad. And the core motivation for a type 3 is to feel worthy and valuable without having to perform. So some famous type 3s would be Tom Cruise, Oprah Winfrey, Beyonce, Tony Robbins, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Han Solo from Star Wars, Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind. Those are all type 3s. Almost always incredibly successful people because they just never stop. And then type 4 is the individualist. My sweet husband's a type 4. 4s don't have feelings. They are feelings. They embody them. They want to build a summer home and just sort of live in their emotions. So some key words for a type 4 is they are expressive. They are creative. They're unique. One of my favorite things about a type 4 is that they are emotionally fearless. They will feel what the rest of us don't want to. They're intuitive. They're sensitive. They can be moody. They can be temperamental. They are very deep. They feel deeply. They can express deeply. Melancholy is second nature to them sometimes. The core fear of a type 4 is to be ordinary, commonplace, plain, flawed. The core motivation for a type 4 is to be authentic and to find their own unique significance. And some famous type 4s out there would be Johnny Depp, Billie Eilish, Frida Kahlo, Angelina Jolie, Loki from the Avengers. My favorite type 4 would be Sadness from the kids' movie Inside Out. If you have any listeners that have seen that, she's a great representation. She looks sad and clinically depressed. She's actually the hero of that film. She's really cool. Okay, so type 5, the investigator. This type is the opposite of a type 4. They don't realize they have feelings. They're all up in their head. They're objective, they're analytical, they're observant, curious, they're insightful. They can be distant. They can come across a little aloof. They can be a little stingy and withholding of their resources because they have a bit of a scarcity mindset where they feel like their time and their energy might run out if they're not careful with it. They're very self-sufficient. They're incredibly witty, and they would almost always rather observe than participate unless they're very comfortable in the setting they're in and with the people they're around. So the core fear of a type 5 is to be incompetent, incapable, overwhelmed, intruded upon. The core motivation for this type is to be capable and competent. That feels like safety to them, to know what they're doing. Some famous type 5s would be Albert Einstein, Jane Goodall, Bill Gates, Stephen Hawking. Sherlock Holmes is a great representation of a type 5. Then type 6 is the loyalist. This type is so incredibly loyal, sometimes too loyal that they will go down with the sinking ship. They are prepared. They're practical. They can be very cautious. They're risk aware. They're hypervigilant. They can come across a little paranoid, a little like Chicken Little, the sky is falling. They ask a lot of what if questions. They're also very, very responsible and very team oriented. I think of sixes as the glue that holds the world together. When we're all running off kind of half cocked, they're just like, wait, let's think about this before we make a mistake. They're keeping us safe a lot of times. So the core fear of a six is fear itself. It's being unsupported, it's uncertainty, it's risk, it's feeling abandoned. And the core motivation for a type six is to have support and security and guidance. Assurance is a word that sixes are always looking to feel. They just want to feel safe and assured. So some famous type sixes, Tom Hanks, Princess Diana, Julia Roberts, Ellen DeGeneres, Mark Twain. Woody from Toy Story is a great example of a type six. So loyal, keeping all the toys together and riddled with anxiety. Type sixes can have the highest anxiety on the Enneagram as well. Okay, type seven. This is the enthusiast. This type, when healthy, is pure sunshine. They are optimistic. They are sunny, almost always extroverted. They're spontaneous. They can be impatient, easily bored, restless. They're fun-loving. They're quick. They can be impulsive. They love their rose-colored glasses. They're excellent reframers, which can be a little bit of an escapist. And they're very self-focused, not self-absorbed. They're just like, what do I want to do? Let's go do that thing. They can also have what the Enneagram calls a half range of emotion. They only want the good half. They don't want to feel anything negative unless they've like really dug in and done their own work. The core fear of a type seven is boredom. It's to be limited. It's to be restricted. FOMO is a big deal for them. It's to be trapped in emotional pain. That's hell for them. And the core motivation for a seven is to feel content and satisfied and fulfilled. So some famous type sevens be Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Dick Van Dyke, Katy Perry, Captain Jack Sparrow, great example of a type seven. Peter Pan, also a good example of a type seven. Okay, type eight, this is my type, is the protector, sometimes called the challenger, but I and other eights I've worked with, we prefer the protector. We can definitely challenge, but that's not who we always are. So some keywords for a type eight. They're strong, they're compassionate, they're protective, they're very direct, very honest, sometimes too honest. We can get ourselves in trouble a little bit. They can be very empowering of the people around them. They hate bullies. They can be intense. They're big magnetic personalities, high voltage, full throttle, independent. They can be domineering. They can be loud. They can be rebellious. So some core fears of a type eight would be being weak, being controlled, vulnerable, manipulated, or anything where they feel like they're at the mercy of injustice. And the core motivation of an eight is to protect themselves and others from harm and avoid being controlled or avoid being challenged. Like nothing makes me more upset than if I'm told what to do or if someone's trying to control me. It's not going to go well. So some famous type eights be Martin Luther King Jr., Winston Churchill, Serena Williams, Oscar Schindler from Schindler's List, Wolverine, Sean Connery is a great example, Katniss Everdeen from The Hunger Games, Arya Stark from Game of Thrones, Merida from Brave. Those are all type eights. And then last, but definitely not least, are our sweet peacemakers. This is type 9. So some keywords for a type 9 is they are steady, they are patient, they're peaceful, they're agreeable, they're excellent listeners. They're not very self-asserting. They can be very self-forgetting, like not even realizing they have needs and wants, catering towards what other people want. They're actually the most stubborn type, which most nines have a hard time believing, but it's true. They can be procrastinating. They can be withdrawing. They can look really busy, but just sometimes not on the right tasks. And they can avoid seeing problems because it might lead to conflict, which is the thing they want to avoid the very, very most. So core fears of a 9 is conflict, contention, feeling unimportant, feeling uncomfortable, or feeling separate from the people that matter to them. And the core motivation for a type 9 is to have inner peace, stability, and harmony. So some famous type 9s, surprisingly, a lot of our US presidents have been type 9s, regardless of political party. So Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, Abraham Lincoln, those are examples of type 9s. Also like Walt Disney, Audrey Hepburn, Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell. Some fictional famous 9s would be like Pumbaa from Hakuna Matata. No worries, man. It's total like everything's good. We have nothing to worry about. Winnie the Pooh, Sleeping Beauty. Those are all very great representations of a type 9. Okay. It's all 9 types. We just zip through those.
Okay. So if you're listening and there are a couple different, if this is your first time hearing about the Enneagram, this might feel a little fire hosey. Yes, that's right. And maybe you're going to want to listen to it a couple times. If somebody wanted to begin to zero in, I mean, right away, I'm guessing that people listening, you're going to say, that's no, maybe that one. Is it normal, Wendy, for people to have like 2 or maybe 3 types where they are like, maybe that sounds a little like me or that?
Yes, 100%. There's in the Enneagram, there's what's called triads. There is the gut, heart, and head triad. And 8s, 9s, and 1s are in the gut triad. 2s, 3s, and 4s are in the heart triad. And 5, 6, and 7 are in the head triad. People in the head triad are very deep thinkers. They're really up in their head, kind of disconnected from their emotions. If that sounds like you, you're probably in the head triad. People in the heart triad will be emotional people. Doesn't mean you're weeping and crying. You're just feeling deeply. And your emotions are a better guide for you than your head sometimes. Those are heart triad people. And then for 8s, 9s, and 1s in the gut triad, you are motivated. There's just this internal instinctive knowing of how you should move. You're thinking and feeling, but it's kind of coming from this gut place. And it's hard to describe for people that are not in the gut triad. If you are, you will know it. Is that a better?
Yeah. Because I'm just thinking if you're listening and it's the first time and you're starting to kind of narrow down, then that I think is very helpful. I also think that behavior, particularly people pleasing, is so interesting when you kind of take the lens of the Enneagram and put it over our people pleasing behavior, because it is very different for each type. And that's where I'd like to spend like the bulk of our conversation today, because if you're trying to find your type, it might be helpful to think about, core fear or core desire, core need. And Wendy went through those. Or do I feel most at home in my head? Do I feel most at home in my heart or emotions? Or do I feel most at home in my kind of gut or instinctual, process or self? That is also very helpful. And my hope is that as we have the next part of our conversation about how specific people-pleasing behavior shows up for each number, that will also be a clue. Because the goal of this episode really is that you better understand yourself and that you better understand why you do the things that you do, right? That sometimes our own behavior is so perplexing to us. And my goal would just be that you better understand that. So as we turn now to like specific people pleasing for each number, how does it show up for each type?
Yeah, this is so fascinating. I love layering the Enneagram over a lot of different conversations and ways that people are just being human in the world. And it may seem like some of these Enneagram types are more natural people pleasers than other types. Like 2 is the helper and 9 is the peacemaker. Those are the 2 types that look the most stereotypically like people pleasers. But it's not necessarily true that they're the only ones doing it. All 9 types are people pleasing. My type as a type 8 looks the least like people pleasers. And I can guarantee you, I am people pleasing every day.
Right.
So all types can engage in people pleasing. It's just going to look very different from one type to the next. Because people pleasing, it's all about survival strategies, and it's disguised as charm or a bid for connection. But knowing our type and what people pleasing might look like for us in that type, there are things we can do to sort of lessen those tendencies and break those habits and really return to what feels like our own integrity rather than the need to perform. If that
Before we
makes sense.
start, yeah, it does. And before we started recording, you mentioned something that I thought was such an interesting word to throw in. People pleasers want to control how we are seen. We are always trying to control the narrative either about us or around us. Tell me, just restate for people listening now, kind of how you were looking at control in this conversation.
Yeah. I think control and people pleasing are like friends. Like they're like holding hands. They're so doing the same thing together. And especially as women, we have this knee-jerk reaction against the word control. It feels like, but let's just separate some of that right now, that control is not always loud or bossy. Like as a type 8, I get called loud, I get called bossy all the time. Control is important to me. It's also important to a 9 that's a lot softer and sweeter than 8s look sometimes. Sometimes control looks like caretaking, it looks like charm, it looks like withdrawal, or it looks like pretending not to have an opinion. But at the root of it all, we're all just trying to feel safe, significant, and secure. And that's the control part of people pleasing. But there are things we can do to sort of like lessen those tendencies. But when we are people pleasing, we are trying to control people's narratives of us, and the Enneagram will point out the ways kind of out of these habits and into a healthier, more mature way of showing up for ourselves and for our people.
That's so important to keep in mind. And I also just want to add that each number has a spectrum, right? From healthy to unhealthy.
Oh, absolutely.
And so as you travel the road of self-awareness, right? And as you travel the road of really getting to know yourself and realizing the effect that your behavior has on your relationship with yourself, either, disconnected or connected, as it has, your behavior has an effect on the relationships that matter to you and are important to you. You come from a less healthy place to a more healthy, more integrated, more self-aware place. And that can look different even within the same number.
Totally. Yeah. You can be in a room with 50 type 1s and they're all going to look a little different.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So again, we're hoping for some general outlines today that will help you zero in on more self-awareness and self-knowledge and kind of give you a place to start to understand. Because it's always interesting to me when I get clients who say, I didn't know I was a people pleaser until you said, something. And sometimes I will try to highlight some of the different ways that people pleasing shows up. And I have this whole list of like sneaky people pleasing, because it's not always, like you said, like a 2 or a 9 who might be considered those more traditional, acquiescent, very kind, soft, willing to do anything for you types would be. So let's just dive in, starting with type 1. How does people pleasing show up for each type in broad generalities? Have I said that enough? Broad generalities.
Right. Because there's so much. The Enneagram is very deep. So type 1, the improver, it looks like moral approval. People pleasing for them might sound like, I'll earn your respect by doing what's right, even if I silently judge you for not doing the same. They don't people please or fawn in the usual way, but they can perform integrity. So you'll see them as good, responsible, and worthy. Disappointing someone feels deeply wrong to a 1. But a question that they could ask if they wanted to maybe lessen those people pleasing tendencies and break those habits could be, am I doing this because it's right, or because I want to be seen as right?
Love.
Yeah.
Such a great question.
Yeah, you're going to feel real called out when we get to your type.
I bet.
I mean, all of your listeners will, not just you and I. But okay, so type 2, it's going to sound like giving love to get love. It's going to feel transactional rather than like altruistic. So it might sound like, do you need anything? Are you sure? I'm happy to get it for you. Let me help you. It's going to be like that. They can morph into the most adorable, like human golden retrievers, offering support, cookies. Of course, they're home baked cookies, emotional labor in exchange for affection, for a sense of identity and belonging. This type probably looks the most like the classic people pleaser. But if you have 2s listening, no, all of us are doing it. This isn't just you. And like the question that they can ask themselves is, am I helping because I want to connect or because I want to control how I'm seen? Right? It's like the question that you taught me, Sara. Do I like my reasons for doing this? Yeah, that's a great question for 2s to ask.
So good. So good.
Yeah. Okay. Type 3, the achiever. This is a success-based shape-shifting. So it might sound like, I'll become whoever you need me to be, just as long as you're impressed. They read the room like it's their job, then perform their way into your admiration. That's very 3. Your validation towards them is their performance review. Like that's truly how they see it. So if they want to kind of avoid those people-pleasing tendencies, they can ask themselves some version of this question: would I still choose to do it this way if nobody was clapping? Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. Type 4, the individualist. So for them, it's the authenticity trap. And it's going to sound like, I will show you my emotional depth if it means you'll see me as special and you see me as unique. Like, I don't want to be like everyone else.
Yeah.
They don't fawn or people please in a traditional way. What they really yearn for is to be understood and emotionally mirrored. That's like, if you can ever emotionally mirror a 4, like that's like their love language. They can even contort themselves into, indie music and tragic poetry if that's what earns connection. And a question that these sweet ones can ask themselves is, am I sharing this to connect or to be validated? Because they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for our type 5s, it's going to sound like, or it's more like, don't need me, just respect me. Right. And it's going to sound like, I will give you my knowledge, but please don't ask how I feel. They don't want to go into feelings. They will people please by offering expertise instead of emotions. They try to earn safety and belonging through sharing their knowledge and their level of competence. Like that feels like connection to them.
Yes.
And they will people please by like giving you the information they think you need in that moment. Right. And the way that they can kind of sort of break those habits if they want to is they can ask, am I holding back to avoid being judged or to stay in control? Right. Because they're both. Yeah, go ahead.
That's such a good question. And living with a 5, my husband is a 5. Am I sharing this information? It's so interesting because one of the most important things that I ever learned about him from my conversation with you is that his sharing of that information is love, but it's not sharing of his like emotional self, right? So that's such an interesting distinction.
Yeah.
And I love that question for a 5. And I'm sure he's going to listen to this.
We love you, Dan.
Keep going. Number 6.
5s are great. All right. 6, the loyalist. This is going to be like anxiety diplomacy. Remember, this type has the highest anxiety on the Enneagram. It's going to sound like, if I keep you happy, I stay safe. They manage group dynamics like emotional bodyguards. It can be placating, adapting, trying to anticipate everyone's reactions to avoid chaos and what will feel like betrayal to them. So they can kind of avoid some of those people-pleasing tendencies by asking, am I adapting to avoid fear, or am I choosing to show up for myself? Because for a 6, sometimes they don't even know what it is to show up for themselves because they're showing up for everyone else because that feels like safety to them. So they can look like people pleasers, a little like a 2 can in that way.
That's such a good point.
Yeah. Okay. Type 7, the enthusiast. It's going to be, we're going to keep it light and fun, guys. Like it's going to sound like I'm going to entertain you, distract you, and keep things upbeat so that you don't see my panic under the party hat, right? They're going to charm. They're going to keep things lighthearted. They want to stay liked and avoid pain and dodge conflict. And if you're not having fun, they feel like they're failing you and themselves. 7s are fun to be around, but they will people please in those ways. Like you're having a hard day, they're just going to be like, oh, it's fine. Let's just go to a movie and grab some ice cream. Like we're going to pivot out of that. They're trying to distract you. Sometimes you just need to feel the feels, right? So a question that a 7 can ask themselves is, am I being honest or am I just keeping things light so no one's upset?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then type 8, the protector, this looks a little like a people-pleasing paradox because this type does not really look like a people pleaser. In fact, talking with you, Sara, like I was like, I'm not a people pleaser. I don't give a rip what somebody thinks about me. Like I'm lying. I'm totally a people pleaser. And it took me a minute to sit with that because it felt like I was being weak or giving up in some way. But I'm doing it too. But what it looks like for 8s, or what it might sound like is, I don't people please, but I will protect you, lead you, or bulldoze your enemies so you know I've got your back. I can resonate with every one of those things. Their version of people pleasing is a control-based loyalty. If I make you feel safe, you'll never betray me. And a question that I should be asking myself and all the 8s out there is, am I offering help or am I asserting control to stay safe? And not just control over other people. It could be control over the situation, control over outcomes, those versions of that.
Okay, that's just rude. I didn't invite you on my podcast to personally attack me.
Oh, I'm attacking myself too.
We
are both 8s.
We're both 8s. And that this is the one that seems most like in some ways over functioning with protection.
Yes.
And
yes.
sometimes self-protection, like armoring up so that nobody can get to me, nobody can see me because I'm afraid of not being able to protect or not being able to control. But that like saving the day,
yes.
feels rude.
Yeah, 8s are going to stand in front of people and be like, I'll take the darts, I'll take the arrows, you stand behind me, let me be your shield.
Yeah.
And whether people want us to do that or not,
exactly,
we're doing that. So that is a form of our people pleasing,
So good.
Yeah. Okay. Type 9, the peacemaker. This type, it's going to be merge, mute, maintain harmony. It's going to sound like your needs and opinions. Awesome. That sounds great. I'll just dissolve myself into those. Thank you very much. They don't want to put their own needs out there because it might break a connection that they feel is important. They go along to get along. They can disappear into other people's wants and opinions and needs to avoid conflict and to preserve connection, even when it costs them their own voice. So a question that the 9s can ask themselves is, am I agreeing to keep the peace or betraying myself to avoid discomfort? And that will be a very uncomfortable question for a 9.
So important. As you are listening to each of these, just notice what resonates. I think my reaction is typically one that people have when they feel a little called out by something. They feel like something is a little too pointed or like, ooh, I hope that's not me.
Yeah.
That can also point you in the direction of something to be curious about. I remember for a long, long time wishing that I was a different number, wanting to be something that felt less like gross to me.
Yep.
And also, just to throw another kind of thing to consider culturally, for women who are raised in patriarchal societies or religious circles that are patriarchal, you can have tendencies. Like I tested as a 2 the first couple times. And so did, Wendy's pointing at herself too. So did she. because what can be valued by your cultural group or your religious group or your family group can sometimes kind of shape your behavior in a way that isn't always readily apparent to you. And you can test as like a 2 when you're really an 8, because 8s are not welcome in, in the particular religious group that I grew up in, and that, can cause problems there.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'm mistyped as a 2 as well. There is a gender piece to the Enneagram that a lot of people don't really talk about that I think is really important. For men, 2 and 9 can sometimes be a hard type to be, because those can be seen as the kinder, softer, more feminine types. It doesn't feel masculine enough, right? For women, type 3 and type 8 gets the same thing. Those are the more stereotypical masculine types, where they are strong, confident, good leaders, can speak up, can stand up for people. Like if I was standing next to a type 8 man and he and I said the exact same sentence, he would be this amazing, wonderful, charismatic leader that we should all follow. And I would be a ball busting bitch.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
yeah,
so
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, there really is a gender piece. So when I first started working with the Enneagram and I first tested probably about 10 years ago, I mistyped as a 2, because that's who I was socialized by religion, family, culture, society was to be the helper. Like a woman that's got a voice, especially in a fundamentalist type religion, it's not okay.
Yeah.
And when I finally started answering the questions for more authentically to who I was rather than who I was supposed to be when I took tests for the Enneagram, and I tested as an 8 consistently when I was deeply honest, like truly honest about how I was answering those questions, I had a whole lot of shame around being an 8. I was like, oh no, I really am that asshole. I don't want to be her. Like the 2 made me feel like I was nice and kind. And there's also a reason for the mistyping, because further deeper levels of the Enneagram, you have a way that you move when you're in growth and health, and a way that you move when you are in stress. For 8s, they go to 2 in health and growth, and they go to type 5 in stress. That doesn't mean when I took the test, I was in this healthy, awesome place. But I have enough 2 in me, because it's one of my lines, that it felt kind of sort of accurate. So that's why it's really helpful to kind of work with a coach, because mistyping happens, and we can get to why that might be if you happen to feel like you've been mistyped, because it's common.
Yeah, it happened to me and to many people that I know. And it's not bad. It just means that you spend some time not really understanding yourself, and that can be avoided. Hey, thanks for listening. If this podcast has been helpful to you, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a 5-star rating in whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. And if you go to my website, sarafisk.coach, you can sign up there to receive my emails. Right now, I'm taking private one-to-one clients who want my help speeding up this work in their own lives. I really hope to provide a lot of free information on my website and in my podcast for people to do this work on their own. But if you're interested in having a coach like me to help you implement these things faster, to find the blind spots and obstacles that you're not aware of, go to my website and sign up for a consult. That's a time when you and I can get on Zoom and talk about the particulars of your situation, and I can show you how I could be helpful. The second thing you can do on my website is sign up for a freebie that I have called Difficult Conversations. Having a conversation that seems like it's going to be hard or difficult is one of the things that people pleasers struggle with. And so I've created a whole guide for you to be able to do that with some more confidence. That will also get you signed up for information about my group program, Stop People Pleasing. It's a group coaching program where you join a community of women just like you who are struggling to overcome perfectionating and people pleasing, and we do it together in a group. It's a really amazing opportunity to not just learn from your own experience, but just to see how similar you are to so many other women out there. The healing and the challenging and the laughing and the growth that happens in that beautiful community of women is really amazing. And if it's interesting to you, I would love for you to know about it.